Today I want to take a moment and talk a little bit about Dr. Seuss. I kind of missed the moment when everyone was talking about it, but let's do this anyway. And I want to talk about Dr. Seuss, not because I think his case is amazingly special in itself, although you can say it's a very interesting case, but because of the broader ideas we can pull through the debate we recently saw politically with Dr. Seuss, and we can apply those ideals into different discussions on different authors and different books. So I'm going to take more of a historical approach to this. I'm going to show you some information, and at the end I'm going to ask you to form an opinion and share an opinion with me about the situation with Dr. Seuss and also about other authors as well. So, to get this started a little bit, Dr. Seuss is a pseudonym for Theodore Geisel, who was born in 1902. Dr. Seuss was born in the United States, and he was an American children's author, but he was also very active politically throughout his whole life, especially during World War II. So today, let's just go ahead and look at some of the different Dr. Seuss political cartoons that he made over time, to try to show why this story is nuanced and a little bit more complex than we originally might think. So it's lately come out that Dr. Seuss had a lot of racist imagery, and this, I feel like, regardless of what you think, is a little bit undeniable. Here we see him portraying a black person kind of like as a savage native. Here we see oftentimes monkeys are used to portray black people, and there's minstrel style cartoons. If you don't remember what minstrel shows were, they were shows often used blackface and made caricatures of African Americans. These shows were very popular for a while, a long time. So you could see that he's definitely drawn and taken in some of these ideas, and that's undeniable. However, with most of these that we'll talk about today, here's another political cartoon that I think is interesting to look at with this. During World War II, they were starting to integrate more professions, more jobs, and stop not hiring African Americans to do a job that only, in their minds, a white American could do. This is a political cartoon Dr. Seuss wrote in response to this whole idea of segregation in the workforce. Here it says, "Listen, maestro, if you want to get real harmony, use the black keys as well as the white." So it kind of shows in a way that he was for integration of the workforce. Now, you can't tell alone from this cartoon if he was for integration just because it was needed in the war, or if he was for integration in a higher sense. A lot of people also give him credit for his early and constant dialogue against Nazis, even when America wanted to be isolationist. He made fun of the idea of isolationism and that America shouldn't get involved in the world. He thought that America should be there for people who needed help. Here's a cartoon that shows that. We have a grandmother or a mother reading to children. Her sweater says "America First." And the cartoon says, "And the wolf chewed up the children and spit out their bones. But those were foreign children, and it really didn't matter." And we can look down at the book and it says Adolf the Wolf. So we could tell that early on in the war, he was a proponent of getting involved, especially to help the Jews, and was a very staunch supporter of taking in Jewish immigrants into the United States, even when at the time it wasn't super popular, but he was always a proponent of letting the Jews come in to escape persecution. Here's a cartoon that kind of shows his feelings about the Jews not getting the help they needed during this time. Even though it's really complicated for anyone to just paint this figure, this author, as good or bad or having good or bad opinions, because although he was early on against the Nazis and for going in to help Jews and also letting them into the country, at the same time, he held beliefs that were not great about Japanese Americans. If you're not aware, in World War II, the United States put Japanese Americans in internment camps. Here's a little bit of footage of that. You can see that even though there's propaganda that it's a great place, you are basically taking people out of their hometowns, taking them away from their professions, throwing them in really tight living spaces with other Japanese families. And this has often been interpreted as one of the low points of American history, when America basically put aside ideals found in the Constitution and targeted a specific group. Dr. Seuss, at that time in history, was for the Japanese internment camps. Here is a political cartoon he put out during the time period. Here we can see that all these Japanese Americans that he is depicting here are coming down from Washington, Oregon, through California. Everyone's grabbing TNT. And then there's a guy on top of the building who's waiting for the signal from home, waiting from the signal from the Japanese. Because the idea was that Japanese Americans were simply Japanese spies who were really not on the side of their current country, but were on the side of their original country, or even the country their ancestors came from, as some Japanese Americans who were put in internment camps already had been in the United States for generations. But we could see this, and we can see that he, in a lot of his children's books, didn't always depict Asians in the best way. Here is a depiction of a Chinese man that has the traditional Manchu style ponytail, which was something they used in the early 1900s, as well as painted yellow and not really depicted in a flattering way, in a way that many people would consider racist. Later on, he claimed to have noticed that this was racist and changed it to this, but I don't know if that's that much better. But he did see it and made the change after being told that it wasn't great, so maybe give him credit for that, up to you. Back to the story with the Japanese, though. He visited Japan after the war, and something he basically said was that he felt like he had judged them a little bit too early, and he realized that there were real people there living real lives, and that's the reason he ended up writing Horton Hears a Who. Now, if you don't remember Horton Hears a Who, it's the book where there's a little elephant that finds a speck of dust on a clover and realizes there's actually people on that speck of dust, and that you actually have to speak out and help them and make sure that other people don't take advantage of them. So the elephant goes around protecting the clover and talking to everyone about how there's real people on this speck of dust and how they have real families and real desires as well, and then all the large animals don't believe him. But he protects them, and it works out perfectly, and then the quote that's so popular from that book is, "A person's a person, no matter how small." And this was supposed to be his apology. He dedicated it to a friend in Japan, and it was kind of his way of saying, I was wrong, and now I realized individualism of each person is important, and there's great people in Japan just like there's great people in America. However, right now that can kind of be interpreted in two ways. Here's a couple opinions I ran across on the internet. This first one kind of gives Dr. Seuss the benefit of the doubt and kind of almost makes it seem like Dr. Seuss repented for the past and tried to make better. So it says, he was a product of his time. Time passed, however, and Seuss began to regret his images. It is widely accepted that his book, Horton Hears a Who, was an apology for his earlier racist art. He went on to write many books with themes of inclusion and tolerance, and this was a quote by Grace Link. I'll link her article down below where she talks about this a little bit more. I also came across a lot of opinions that I also think are valid and could be mentioned here about Horton Hears a Who. Some people don't really accept it as an apology because they feel like it brings up other issues. Here we have someone tweeting under the title, The Conscious Kid. Not only does a white savior narrative play out in Horton Hears a Who, Seuss himself is positioned as a white savior for writing it. Although he supported the mass incarceration and killing of Japanese people, he gets lauded for his tolerance for his book about saving them. And I mean, if you do look at the book, you can tell that the elephant is basically saving the clover, and some people are not fans of the idea of quoting from here a white savior. So it's a really complicated issue. Do you let an author kind of later on in their life try to make amends for something that they did earlier? Or was the harm that an author does, especially having such a big platform, so harmful as kind of to make it hard to make up for it? I don't know. Let me know in the comments what you think about the story of Dr. Seuss. Do you agree with one of the comments that I shared? Do you have another view? And then broaden it a little. What expectations should we have for authors? Do you connect the author deeply to what's in their book, or do you have a separation between book and author? How do you view that in your own head? I'm really excited to read these comments because this is an opinion that I'm still in the process of forming, and I hope that looking through these political cartoons gives you a perspective and helps you form an opinion as well. Like this video if you think it's valuable, and hopefully I'll see you later.